Hello everyone, my name is Borax and I've been on a quest to play every single champion in the support role. Today we'll be looking at Veigar, the tiny master of evil. The reason why I wanted to try out Veigar was that I was thinking you could get a lot of free AP from this passive in certain melee support matchups, and in the late game, getting a full lane stun on such a short cooldown seemed like a really solid option as a support. Combine that with an ultimate ability that always does a truckload of damage, Veigar Support seems like it could be quite viable in theory. But without a further ado, let's see if that's true by first taking a look at Veigar's ability to support in the early game.
Suffering awaits!
Let's start off with something that I enjoy doing, but many others don't, and that's invading. Veigar is kind of weird for invading. If you are willing to start Cage in your bot lane matchup, the ability is super strong level 1, especially if you can find the enemy team in a choke point. So if your team decides to invade, I would recommend not leveling up an ability until you know you're going to scrap, and then you can get your E for the fight. Because in most cases, I like to start Q so you can start poking and getting that free AP from Veigar stacks. In fact, if the enemy decides to do a really weird invade, you can constantly hit your Q on them, and then show up to a lane with a bunch of free AP and a nice little lead. For invading, I will give Veigar a flat B. It's solid if your team is really eager, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I like to judge the overall laning phase based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all inning. Now you might think that Veigar is exceptionally good at poking because he is in theory a ranged mage who should be dishing out some decent damage. Honestly though, in the games that I played, his poke just felt okay. The main problem is that all of your abilities are kind of hard to hit, and if you ever mess up while trying to poke the enemy, they can just harass you right back and really hurt you. Peeling is the main reason why you should be playing Veigar support in lane, and that's because of how strong his E ability is at deterring enemy movements and creating space for your ADC. Even though his cage is strong, sometimes it's not enough. For instance, your ADC could decide to auto attack the wrong person a bunch of times and then only use their heal long after you die to try and catch up to the kill, but still not end up getting it. All inning is a strength that Veigar has, which truly shocked me, although it makes a lot of sense. His ultimate is really just an FU ability against low target opponents. He also does an insane amount of burst damage all on his own. If your opponent is ever silly enough to walk into your cage, you can quickly bop him with your QW and your ADC's damage, and then you can kill secure it with your ultimate ability pretty much every single time. For Veigar's general ability to lane, I will give him an A rating. It's not the absolute best, but it's definitely by far not the worst. Any champion that has range and has CC will do fairly well in a support lane, and the nice little benefit of Veigar is that you really shine later on in the game if you can get enough stacks off for your passive, which, in case you aren't aware, is that you gain AP for every single ability that you hit on enemy champions. Roaming as Veigar isn't half bad. You see a scrap occurring and you just throw your cage at them and watch them suffer. He's exceptionally good right now because so many people are playing melee champions in every single role outside of ADC, and that's where Veigar actually does quite well against. You can really limit people's ability to outplay your team, like for instance an Aurelia, because she can't do her a million dashes BS and instead has to sit in a timeout and just die. For roaming, I will give Veigar a B+. While yes, his cage is a big impact ability in scraps, it's honestly pretty short range and hard to utilize to catch someone out, and is better served as a surprise factor ability. Also, Veigar naturally doesn't have any roaming enhancing abilities such as movement speed or dashes to get over walls or to engage easier, so I think a B+ rating is very fair for the Yordle. Before we take a look at Veigar's overall ability to support in the early game, let's take a look at some of the matchups he will have to face. If you've seen any of my other Willis support videos, you already know what's going to be at the top of the list, which is of course Morgana, the League of Legends equivalent of running out of toilet paper after eating Taco Bell. But in all seriousness, Morgana is a really difficult matchup because if her hour-long root ever hits you, you're going to die, and her spell shield completely ignores your cage, so overall, not a fun matchup. Other champions that I think are quite difficult and belong in the make me go wah wah tier include long range poke mages such as Vel'Koz and Lux that can just harass you from afar and make you miserable. And then Blitzcrank, who can yoink your immobile self right to him and kill you. Champions that belong in the kinda hard tier include Thresh, Nautilus, and Pyke. These are all of the rest of the hooker champions that if you get hit by their ability you will die, but they are susceptible to your cage. Next up we have some champions that will be quite skill based, and they are shorter range mages and champions with one CC ability you kind of have to juke around. Then we have some champions I believe Veigar can do quite well against, which includes some short-range engaged champions in Alistar and Leona, peel champions with hard CC in Taric and Nami, and finally Senna, which will be a race between you two in getting stacks during the game. Finally, we have some champions that will learn what a true power bottom looks like. The first two here are Set and Tom, because they don't have a ton of engage that they can use to get around your cage. Pantheon also belongs here because he can't really do much to counter your cage. Sure, Tom can jump towards you, but then you can just trap him right after. Then we get a bunch of enchanters that don't really pose any kill threat to you, and you'll be able to get some stacks pretty safely during lane. Oh, before I forget, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even, and that's because I just haven't had to face any of these supports in such a long time. Now that we have taken a look at the matchups that Veigar might have to face, let's rate his ability to support in the early game, which I will slot at a solid A-. The main issues that I encountered was your overall squishiness and short range, which will cause you to be in quite a lot of danger. Despite that, the insane burst from his ultimate when targets are low, and his incredible ability to impact scraps with his cage early on, both for peeling and catching people out, makes him quite a nice support early on.
The magic! It calls to me!
When it comes to late game, I like to consider the champion's abilities to engage, peel, and their overall impactfulness on a teamfight when they're being utilized as a support. Engaging as Veigar support is something you can kinda do, but you're not amazing at it. Pretty much your engage tool is either hitting someone from out of vision with your Everfrost mythic item, or flashing forward in order to land your cage on opponents that are in front of you. For engaging, I will give Veigar a conservative B rating, because he can indeed do it, but he's not great at it. On the other hand, when it comes to peeling, Veigar is amazing. With the build I go, and even with just 3 items in Everfrost, Zhonya's, and Cosmic Drive, your E cooldown will be as low as 6.38 seconds, which is crazy low considering that it already lasts for a little bit of time. The enemy will be really frustrated as they are running towards your team and have to constantly deal with annoying zones that they pretty much can't walk into, or else they will face certain death. For peeling, I will give Veigar a S-. The reason why I'm not putting him into God tier status for peeling is that he is a bit of a one-trick pony, and if you do somehow waste or miss your E, you don't offer anything else up in terms of peeling, such as shields or heals. For overall team fighting, Veigar support in the late game is a lot of fun. You know how it's frustrating as a support player not to be able to kill 1 health people when they run towards you? Well, even though you are a support, as long as you've been occasionally hitting enemies with your abilities, which in case you didn't know grants Veigar AP, you'll always have a good amount of the stuff to smork some foes down, especially if your ultimate ability is up. Also, Veigar's cage is great in teamfighting, as it's such a big radius honestly and can have a major impact. And in fact, outside of Veigar's ultimate ability, all of his kit is AoE, so he can do a lot of damage when your opponent is grouped together. For teamfighting, I will give Veigar support an A+. While yes, he is good, he is not that amazing engager or peeler that you would want from a support in a teamfight, but despite that, he does dish out considerable damage that as long as you don't get one shot, which can honestly happen a lot, he will really shine in a teamfight setting. Before we give Veigar support an overall rating, let's take a look at some of the runes and items that I enjoyed and like to run. Now then, I'm not sure if this is the best keystone choice, but I will admit it was surprisingly fun to use, and I got the inspiration when I was looking up what Mickey X, the support for G2, was running when he played Veigar support, and that keystone is Phase Rush. If you can proc this rune, it's a great way to disengage from a fight and run your little squishy ass away from all those meanies coming for it. But it can be a bit difficult to proc in a difficult situation, as you do have to hit your abilities. Another rune that I enjoyed for a more poke-centric build was Arcane Comet, as it is nice and lane, but fair warning, the enemies, if they are good, can avoid the Comet damage as it isn't attached to a slow in any way. Regardless, if you choose Comet or Phase Rush, for the rest of the sorcery tree, I take Mana Flow Ban for mana sustain, Transcendence for cooldown reduction, and finally Scorch if you want to harass during lane more, or you can even go Gathering Storm if you believe you can scale really hard. Secondarily, I like to go Inspiration to take Perfect Timing because it does well to help you survive and builds into Zhonya's, and then Cosmic Insight to reduce your Summoner cooldowns as well as your Everfrost item and that Zhonya's like I mentioned. For the miniature runes, I take CDR, Ability Power, and finally either Armor or MR to counter what poke you will be most concerned with. Now, let's talk about items. If you're against a melee enemy support, I would recommend Spell Thief's Edge, as you can poke and harass with autos and abilities. But against a ranged support that has more range than you, I take Relic Shield, and the added perk of this item is that you can last hit minions with your Q in order to stack up your passive more. Now, on Veigar Support, I wouldn't recommend rushing a Mythic, but rather Cosmic Drive, because Veigar is the only champion that can utilize the CDR movement speed because of your passive, which gives you more AP, and therefore you can get your 160 AP you need just from one item. After Cosmic Drive, you can pick up your Mythic, and I would recommend Everfrost as it helps you peel and engage a bit. For other Mythics you could explore, you could go with Shurelio's Battle Song for running away, or perhaps you could even do something like Locket of the Iron Solari if you kind of want to do a tankier build. Then, for third, I would strongly recommend Zhonya's, as the item is just OP and helps you survive all ins. For your last item, it really depends, and oftentimes you won't have the goal to get more items, but if the game is lasting a while, it is good to pick up anti-heal and items such as Morello's, as there's so much healing currently in the game. As I was editing this, I just realized I almost forgot boots. For boots, I would highly recommend going CDR boots, as this build is really focusing on just maximizing how low your CDR on your E can be. But if you really want to roam and you love that so much, you could go Mobies. If you really feel like you need to do damage, you could do Sworks, of course. Now that you have taken a look into Veigar's items and runes, let's give him an overall rating as a support. And that rating to me will be an A+. He's really strong in the right situation, but he does have his clear limitations in hard to hit abilities, short range, and overall squishiness. But when the time is right, Veigar Support can truly shine and is an absolute delight to play. Thank you guys so much for watching this Willis support video. If you enjoyed this one, I hope you would consider leaving it a like, as that really makes my endorphins go up and brings a smile to my face. If you're new here and enjoy the content, I hope you consider subscribing, and if you already are subscribed, then you are a freaking legend. Thanks once again for watching this video, and if you do try out Veigar Support, I hope you guys have fun and wish you good luck. You will probably need it.